Thomas Jefferson changed the course.
Good evening, everyone. The anthrax attacks continue. Today, confirmation that 2 postal employees have died as a result of inhaling anthrax. 2 others who worked at the same facility have been hospitalized with inhalation anthrax. Both tonight are in critical but stable condition. Authorities in New Jersey say they have confirmed a case of anthrax inhalation there as well. The woman employee worked at the same mail center that handled letters sent to Senator Tom Daschle, Tom Brokaw, and the New York Post. Late today, a White House mail screening facility also testing positive for anthrax spores. None of the employees who work at that facility tested positive for anthrax exposure. John King joins us now from the White House with more on that story. John?
Lou, good evening to you. That facility is located at a military installation, the Anacostia Naval Yard, a few miles from the White House. All White House mail, even before September 11th, was brought to that facility for additional security checks. We are told a very small trace amount of anthrax spores found in a slitting machine, a machine that opens the White House mail so that it can go through additional security tests. No powder at that site at all. So the operating assumption, we are told now, is that a letter or letters became contaminated at the previous stop. All the White House mail also goes to the Brentwood facility in the District of Columbia, the workplace of those 2 gentlemen you just mentioned who have died, and the 2 others who are hospitalized with inhalation anthrax. Still, all this raising new questions about the scope and the breadth of these anthrax scares, because it has now reached, at least in some form, the facility that handles all White House mail. So as the President met with leaders of Congress today, he was asked an obvious question. Sir, have you been tested for anthrax?
I don't have anthrax. And it's hard for Americans to imagine how evil the people are who are doing this. We're having to adjust our thinking. We're a kind nation, we're a compassionate nation, we're a nation of strong values, and we value life. And we're learning people in this world, want to terrorize our country by trying to take life. They won't succeed.
Again, the White House saying no evidence that any of the workers at the remote facility or here at the White House have any symptoms. Still testing and antibiotics being offered to anyone who works in the mailrooms, either off-site here at the White House or at this remote facility where the low level of anthrax spores were detected. Mr. Bush saying during that meeting of Congress, both with congressmen, both in public and in private, no direct evidence linking this back to Osama bin Laden or any terrorist group outside of the United States, but that is certainly the operating assumption of the United States government as well. And as they continue to investigate this one case, also plans being made to conduct at least a random sampling at many of the 27,000 postal facilities across the country. Government sources telling us they don't think it's feasible right now to test all 27,000, but they do want to get a better handle on the potential reach of these scares. Lou?
John, as you put it, the White House saying that the assumption is that the letters were contaminated from a previous stop. That is quite a judgment. And in terms of the environmental testing of the White House, as we know, the Capitol building being shut down for environmental testing, do we know when the environmental testing took place at the White House?
The testing goes on here at the White House even before September 11th. The air is periodically tested at the White House even prior to these terrorist attacks. It has been tested on a much more frequent basis since then. All of those tests, Lou, have been negative. And one of the reasons the White House believes, A, that no one inside this complex has come in contact with anthrax, and B, that anthrax was somehow gotten on a letter at a previous stop, is because all White House mail is opened at this facility. All of it then is also run through scanners in which that mail is irradiated. That process, White House sources tell us, kills the bacteria, so that when the mail actually comes here, already opened and already screened to the White House, in the view of the White House right now, it would be impossible for the anthrax to carry on, to get inside the complex.
John, thank you very much. John King from the White House. Well, now for the latest in the attacks against the Taliban and al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. U.S. aircraft pummeled Taliban troops and their tank positions. Those targets about 25 miles north of the capital of Kabul. On the ground, Taliban and Northern Alliance troops have been exchanging extremely heavy mortar and rocket fire. The Pentagon today showing footage of Taliban communications posts and military targets that were struck in recent air sorties. The Pentagon also confirming that a couple of bombs missed their intended targets and did land in civilian areas. The Pentagon also confirmed that all al-Qaeda training camps in Afghanistan have now been destroyed, but the Pentagon would not confirm that there were a total of 9 camps, as Britain's defense minister had said. U.S. bombs continue to fall on Taliban and al-Qaeda targets in Afghanistan tonight. The Pentagon denies that U.S. jets hit a hospital in Herat. John Voss joins us from Islamabad with the latest. John?
Hello, Lou. Well, those claims of that hospital being hit in Herat coming from the UN here in Islamabad today. They say that the hospital which was hit was on the eastern outskirts of Herat. They say that it was in fact a military hospital inside a military compound. They do in fact say that details of what happened are in fact sketchy. They say they were radioed by local Afghan workers in Herat who spoke in their local language and informed them that they were in fact in the presence of Taliban officials. Now, as I said, those details came here in Islamabad from the UN. Stephanie Bunker, a UN spokesman, gave us some more details.
Our information, which we received late this afternoon, is that a hospital in Herat was hit and it was reportedly destroyed. It was a military hospital in a military compound on the eastern outskirts of the city. The numbers of casualties are not known. And that's all the information we have on that for this time.
The other thing which we don't have at this time is whether or not that hospital was clearly marked with the red crescent. That would obviously indicate that the hospital could have been seen. But we know, in fact, that the Taliban was telling us yesterday that a civilian hospital was hit in Herat. They claimed as many as 100 civilian casualties. The UN here does point out, in fact, that it's not unusual for military hospitals to treat civilians who may have been hurt or injured in some way. We also, as far as the UN goes, they're saying that details are in fact very sketchy, but the Pentagon is in fact saying that a bomb may have gone astray hitting a field near Herat and may have caused damage to some kind of home for the elderly. So in fact 3 different stories coming out from Herat at this stage. Now the other developments here, I suppose, we've had some more anti-US demonstrations near the town of Jacobabad. What we know is the fact that that is the airfield base, the Pakistani airfield base, where US troops are, which they are using for search and rescue missions. Those demonstrations today were in fact not as violent as they had been previously. We know that there were something like 100 arrests as well as 14 people injured, but police very much in control of that situation, moving in something like 2,000 extra police to take care of that demonstration, even though the government banned the demonstration and in fact tried to seal off the city from those very hardline Islamic religious clerics who had been leading those demonstrations over recent days. Now these demonstrations come, obviously the people very angered by the presence of US forces on Pakistani soil, obviously taking no comfort, in fact, in the words of Pakistan President Musharraf. He was on national television last night saying that Pakistani forces would not be permanently based in Pakistan and that in fact the US forces would leave once this mission is over. Lou?
Okay, John Voss, how many people in those demonstrations?
Well, the figures are conflicting, but certainly we're talking hundreds, not thousands. That's the report which we're getting. Last week, you might recall, we had thousands there, but very much the small skirmishes.
So the size of the demonstrations are actually dwindling.
It certainly looks that way. President Musharraf has certainly got a very tight lid on these anti-US demonstrations. He was on television, as I said the other night, reassuring the Pakistani public that there were benefits for them being part of this coalition. He also said that the people leading those demonstrations were not leading these demonstrations in the best interest of Pakistan, and he urged the silent majority basically to stay the course.
John Voss from Islamabad, thank you very much. Well, former National Security Advisor Sandy Berger joins us now to assess the state of our national security in both the terms of the war against terrorism and the anthrax attacks here at home. Good to have you with us.
Good to be here, Lou.
As we have just heard from John Voss in Islamabad, Sandy, demonstrations, whether small or large, however one wants to characterize them, these apparently very small indeed. They are getting a great deal of media attention. As a former National Security Advisor, how would you react to these kinds of reports?
Well, I think the fact that the demonstrations are not large suggests that General Musharraf has control of the situation. But I think we have to recognize that he is walking a razor's edge here. Right. And while we have to expect a great deal from the Pakistani government, we also have to be sensitive to the situation in Pakistan. The last thing we want, obviously, is to destabilize Pakistan and have a Talibanization essentially next door. But it seems to me, from watching this, that President Musharraf is in control.
And at this point, the Talibanization, as you put it, Sandy, doesn't look like anything more than a remote possibility?
I think it is a worst-case scenario, but one we have to be sensitive, obviously, to the stability of the Pakistani government. We don't want Osama bin Laden with atomic weapons. That's why we're conducting this campaign in as focused and strategic a way as we can.
And in conducting the campaign that way, we are also dealing with the complexity of the Kashmir situation as it exists between Pakistan and India. People sometimes forget there is also a disputed border there with China as well. How complicated and how sensitive and delicate is that situation in your judgment?
Well, I think it's a very important dimension in a very complex situation the administration is managing. We obviously, in some ways, South Asia is one of the most dangerous parts of the world. There have been 4 wars there, 2 nuclear nations that don't really have much experience being nuclear nations. And we have to be careful, on the one hand, that the Pakistan hardliners don't take advantage of this situation to foment terrorism across the line of control, or that the Indians don't get on a hair trigger and overreact and act against Pakistan. That's why Secretary Powell went to the region a few days ago, but it's something we have to watch very, very carefully. Obviously, we don't want this to bleed into South Asia as we are fighting the enemy here in Afghanistan.
Because of the complexity of the geopolitical nature, just the venue of this action against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, is that a greater priority for the administration as it pursues military activity and seems to be doing so somewhat urgently? Or is winter, in your judgment, an equal concern in the military options?
Well, obviously, winter is a factor here, but I don't think we should underestimate, or certainly the Al-Qaeda should not underestimate, our capacity to operate under very inclement circumstances. We're now entering a phase here where we're going to be using force in a intelligence-driven, selective, strategic way. Those forces are resilient, highly trained, able to operate in very difficult circumstances. So I don't think we should consider winter somehow a artificial deadline.
And in terms of judging the success of operations to this point, in terms of the Taliban targets that have been hit and will be hit, in terms of the Al-Qaeda, which we've heard very little about in terms of military hits there, how would we judge the success of this operation in the weeks and months ahead?
Well, we certainly, I think, have been successful in diminishing the Taliban's military capability. They still have, obviously, fighters here. We have a greater capacity, I think, than we did a month ago to operate on a selective and targeted basis in Afghanistan. We have to recognize, Lou, that there's 2 fronts to this conflict here. There is a military side and a political side, and we have to conduct a very aggressive and unrelenting military campaign in a way that isolates them and not us. And that's a difficult line to walk. We want to destroy this enemy without glorifying them. We want to destroy them and marginalize them at the same time.
To destroy them at some rapid rate would seem to be urgently required because the terrorist attacks of the United States continue, the anthrax attacks. At what point can we err by being too cautious and too careful because of the complexity of the geopolitical situation in Afghanistan and surrounding it, in your opinion?
Well, I think this is going to be very much intelligence-driven, as I said before. Certainly the effort to get rid of the Taliban government is proceeding. That will continue. But in terms of actually going after bin Laden and his al-Qaeda associates, it's going to depend upon intelligence. We have now assets that we've never had before in Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and we shouldn't feel under, obviously there's urgency here, but this is going to take time, and we have to conduct this in a way that organizes ourselves for the long haul.
Sandy Berger, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Lou.
Coming up next, the terrorist attacks against the United States, showing also how generous Americans can be. Tonight we'll report to you where that $1 billion of money is going. We'll also be talking with India's ambassador to this country. India's battle with Pakistan, as you just heard from Sandy Berger, could well create complications in the war against terrorism. And fighting the spread of anthrax, we'll be talking with a former weapons inspector in Iraq about America's bioterrorism battle.
Service. What does that mean anymore? I don't need to hear about how important I am. I need to feel it. That means no wasting my time. And if you treat me like a number, treat me like the only number that matters.
One company understands. It's not what you say, it's what you do. Ask your financial advisor about Pioneer Investments. Pioneer Investments. One goal, yours.
It's easy to take electricity for granted. A lot of us aren't even sure where it comes from. So we're sometimes surprised to learn that over half of the electricity we use comes from coal.
Mrs. Wendler!
And thanks to a $50 billion investment in clean coal technologies by America's electric utilities that use coal, it's getting cleaner every day, helping us protect something we can't take for granted: our environment.
Closed captioning for this program has been provided by Verizon Communications.
You're watching Lou Dobbs Moneyline. Next, tackle the tough issues on Wolf Blitzer Reports, followed by Crossfire, only on CNN.
Good news from the world of science. Tests prove that clothes washed after 8 p.m. get just as clean as clothes washed before. Stay tuned for our findings on dishes.
Using electricity at night eases the pressure on the power system. So wait until 8. Portland General Electric. We all have the power to help.
What's the most expensive part of a car? The engine? The transmission? Well, for most of us, it's the financing. And that's important to know because right now, Landmark Ford is offering rates as low as 0% on all new cars and trucks. Finance this Expedition for 60 months and you'll save more than $10,000 in interest alone. More than $10,000. But the program ends soon, so see us now at Landmark Ford in Tiger, just off 55 at the Haines Street exit.
Get more Finland!
This is CNN.
The number of anthrax infections and exposure is growing, it seems, daily. The ease with which bacteria has been spread underscores the difficulty of controlling or eradicating weapons of bioterror. Charles Delfer is the former United Nations Deputy Chief Weapons Inspector. He monitored Saddam Hussein's operations in Iraq after the Persian Gulf War, and he joins us now from our studios in Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us, Charles.
Good to be here, Lou.
Let's start with the first thing that we're all reading and hearing, and that is speculation about the relationship between Saddam Hussein and the anthrax attack in this country. Do you think there is such, more importantly, do you think that there is proof that such a relationship exists?
Too soon to tell, Lou. There's two ways Iraq could be involved. One is directly, that is that someone in Baghdad decided this was the thing to do. More likely, though, is a second way, and that's indirectly. That is to say that they may have trained, provided materials, or assisted in other ways the people actually conducted this activity. And that may have been as recently as months ago or earlier yet, years ago.
Well, as the former deputy weapons inspector in Iraq, can you give us your best judgment in some sense of how much we should rely on that judgment as to the capacity of Iraq in terms of chemical biological warfare?
Iraq certainly has a sizable capacity. They certainly have the intellectual capacity to produce more. When we left in 1998, the biology area was the one which was least understood. It is the one which Iraq preserved the most. They've now had 3 years to further develop it. They can produce not only the agent, but all the materials and equipment indigenously, so they don't even need to import anything. They'll have a sizable capability right now.
Give us your best judgment also as to what should be done about it.
Well, the advantage of Iraq is that it's a state, and as a state, and it can be deterred, and that's what's worked for the last 10 years. Saddam Hussein has been deterred from using some of this material against anyone else. The problem is if this material is provided to a third party, to independent actors who are not likely to be deterred by threats or actions by the United States. That's the problem.
Okay. Charles Delfer, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, still ahead here, you gave money to help victims of the September 11th attacks. You thought they would receive most of those funds. You probably thought that much of that money would have already been dispersed. They have not been. You may well be shocked to learn where that money is now going. That story coming right up. Has the government mishandled the anthrax investigation? Postal workers say Congress received preferential treatment. We'll be joined by a leading corporate communications expert to give us his view. And despite the war and the anthrax attacks, Americans are defying predictions of some, and they're back shopping. We'll have live reports for you tonight from malls all around the country. And we'll be talking with India's ambassador to the United States about his country's problems with Pakistan and what problems that could create in the war against terrorism.
Coming up, Lou is joined by Lalit Mansingh, Indian ambassador to the United States.
In this time of need, the American Red Cross is profoundly grateful for your generous outpouring of support. The long period of uncertainty and recovery awaits us all. Thanks to your contributions, the American Red Cross is providing life-saving assistance, including food, shelter, grief counseling, and precious blood. We still need your help. Please call 1-800-HELP-NOW to offer your financial support. Thank you. Together, we can save a life.
The Power of Caring, brought to you by Cigna. He's a leader, a hero, and a role model both on and off the field. Peyton Manning's Payback Foundation helps fund local sports programs, giving disadvantaged kids opportunities they never had. Last year's Payback Classic raised $50,000.
It makes you realize what is really important, to have a positive impact on these kids' lives.
For more on the power of caring, log on to cnnsi.com/caring.
He's worked almost 40 years. She's worked almost 40 years. And during that time, they've gone on walks together instead of cruises, and shared secrets together instead of champagne, just so that someday they could retire and be together all the time. At Cigna, we care about the retirement dreams of over 5 million people. After all, there are dreams too. Cigna, a business of caring.
Anthrax in the Postal Service. Will the recent scares change the way your mail is delivered? Plus the latest into the investigation of those responsible. Join Aaron Brown for a CNN special report. Tonight at 10 Eastern. Depend on CNN.
As the bombing of al-Qaeda and Taliban targets in Afghanistan continues, the Bush administration is struggling to hold together a fractious international coalition. A key member of that coalition is India. The majority Hindu nation is locked in a border dispute with its Muslim neighbor Pakistan, and with tension obviously rising between the two nuclear powers in the disputed territory of Kashmir. Tonight I am joined by India's ambassador to the United States, Lalit Mansingh. Good to have you with us, Ambassador.
Thank you, Lou.
Prime Minister Vajpayee and President Bush scheduled to meet. What do you think will be the #1 order on the agenda?
Well, I think they will discuss bilateral relations, but certainly they will review the contemporary situation, what's happening in Afghanistan and in our region.
And in your region, the border dispute, the dispute with Pakistan over Kashmir intensifying as attacks over the last week following the announcement that Secretary of State Powell would be in the region. Was that what caused that to flare up at precisely that moment?
No, the problem we face is of cross-border terrorism, which has been supported by our neighbor Pakistan. The latest incidents have been quite serious. As you know, on the 1st of October, there was an attack on the assembly in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and more than 40 people died in that. Right. So we are facing continuous attacks from across the border, and we have to defend ourselves.
You have undoubtedly read or seen the accounts that some say that Secretary of State Powell's mission in New Delhi failed because he could not keep that dispute from flaring further into violence. As one who has worked on that difficult issue for many years, did you find that somewhat ironic that the Secretary of State would be measured in terms of solving the dispute in one day's visit?
Well, I don't think Secretary Powell's visit was a failure. We had very good discussions in New Delhi. We put across our point of view, and I think he appreciated what we were facing. What we tried to put across to the administration is that until you ask Pakistan to observe restraint, we will be obliged to deal with terrorism as we face it in Jammu and Kashmir.
And as you deal, and every civilized nation in the world deals with terrorism, how strong will the Indian government be in its activities against terrorism? Military force, for example, in the broader effort?
Well, we've been facing terrorism for nearly 2 decades now. We faced it in the 80s in the state of Punjab, right, and in the 90s in Jammu and Kashmir. Our security forces are geared to dealing with terrorism, and we are doing it. And we'll do it with all the resources available with us.
As you look at the alliance that has been formed with Pakistan, and let's look at it first in bilateral terms between the United States and Pakistan, is there, in your judgment, a role for India in a like manner with the United States in this war against terrorism?
Yes, we are members of this grand coalition against terrorism. In fact, we consider ourselves a frontline state in the fight against terrorism. We've been doing it, as I mentioned, for 2 decades now.
You have a Muslim population that is actually larger than the population of Pakistan.
That's right.
Give us your best insight as to how to deal with this situation so that this does not degenerate into a discussion of Muslim religion and stays focused on the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, and the narrow fundamentalist terrorist organizations.
Our Muslim population is well aware that this is not a fight against Islam. It is a struggle against terrorism. Fortunately, our Muslim population has not been affected by the Taliban virus. So we don't anticipate any problem so far as our Muslim brothers and sisters are concerned.
And again, as you look forward to that summit meeting between the Prime Minister of India and the President of the United States, what would be your hope that would be the result of that meeting?
Well, we expect a good understanding on international issues. As you know, we have a very strong bilateral relationship which is based on shared values, on common strategic perceptions. So I think the 2 leaders will discuss a wide range of issues, and I expect that they will find a lot of common ground.
Okay. Mr. Ambassador, it is good to have you with us.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you. Coming up next, Americans gave $1 billion to help out the victims of the World Trade Center attacks and their families after September 11th. Stay with us because you're going to be surprised when you find out where that money is really going. And consumers are shopping again. How much are they spending? We'll be taking you live around the country to some of the most interesting and attractive malls. The United States continues its assaults against terrorist targets in Afghanistan. But is the Taliban winning the public relations war? We'll have an answer for you. And we'll tell you how the government's doing when it comes to informing the public about the spread of anthrax. We'll be talking with the man who helped Johnson & Johnson through the Tylenol scare next here on Moneyline.
After the break, Lou speaks with crisis management specialist Robert Dillenschneider.
Solutions others can't. Credit Suisse First Boston.
What's one of the hottest securities to hit Wall Street since the QQQ? How can you invest in every Fortune 500 company with just one trade? What lets you buy or sell America's biggest companies throughout the day just like a stock? Set your sight on the FFF, the Fortune 500 Index Tracking Stock. Call your broker today or 1-800-222-5FFF for a free prospectus. The Fortune 500 Index Tracking Stock. Realize the investing power of the FFF.
The U.S. pounds targets from the air. Is the Northern Alliance prepared to lead a ground strike? On Wolf Blitzer reports. Then on Crossfire, terrorists on student visas? Join the debate over U.S. immigration standards, beginning at 7 Eastern on CNN.
As the war against terrorism continues, log on to CNN.com to find out what's happening now. Get up-to-the-minute, on-the-scene reports from CNN correspondents in the field. Go behind the headlines and get the full story. With detailed maps, photo galleries, and interactive 3D models. Plus, be the first to know when news breaks with CNN email alerts. Get everything you need to know when you want it at CNN.com.
How can the United States battle and beat bioterrorism, and how can you stay safe? Health Secretary Tommy Thompson, Senator Bob Graham, NBC's Maria Shriver, and others. Tonight, 9 Eastern on Larry King Live on CNN.
Now for the latest in the anthrax attacks. Anthrax spores discovered today at a facility that handles White House mail. President Bush says he is fine.
First of all, I don't have anthrax. And it's hard.
Well, White House spokesman Ari Fleischer says anthrax did not make it to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And elsewhere in Washington, inhaled anthrax found to have caused the deaths of 2 postal workers. 2 other employees tonight who work in the same facility have contracted inhalation anthrax. In New York, officials say Cipro will be offered to at least 10,000 postal workers in half a dozen Manhattan facilities that might have handled anthrax-laced mail. And tonight, an ultimatum for Bayer, the maker of the anthrax-fighting drug Cipro. Health and Human Services Secretary Tommy Thompson saying Bayer must sell Cipro to the government for less than $1 a pill. Thompson making those comments in an interview with CNN's Larry King. You can see that entire interview tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern here on CNN. And finally, Finance Committee Chairman Max Baucus unveiled his economic stimulus package. The Democratic senator saying the proposal will fit the president's proposal and will inject some $70 billion into the economy over the next year. And America's war against terrorism is now being fought on a number of fronts. There is the military front, the domestic front, and of course the public relations front. Joining me now to talk about how the PR battle is progressing, public relations expert Robert Dillenschneider. Bob, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you, man.
Let's talk about first what is a PR nightmare, it seems to me, and that is the Postal Service after saying that its workers were safe, with the deaths, the tragic deaths of 2 employees today, having to acknowledge that they had not taken the same precautions as were taken with the United States Congress. How do they deal with that?
Lou, a lot of this boils down to what you do and what you are seen to be doing or what you say you're going to do. The post office undoubtedly has a problem, but on the other hand, they've got to recover from that problem. And what they have to do is fight aggressively to be recognized the same way the firemen, the same way the policemen are recognized as real heroes. These people are going up against a very difficult problem every single day, and they've got to somehow demonstrate the fact that they should be accorded the same courtesy that firemen and policemen are accorded.
And how should the Postal Service act now? Because as you've acknowledged, they have a major PR problem, as well as a true management problem.
The Postal Service has to come out and they have to talk about all of the things they've done to protect their workers. They have to put their workers out and talk about how they're prepared to take a step forward and do whatever they have to do to deliver the mail and stand alongside policemen and firemen as courageous people here in the United States.